More draws. Get everybody's attention. 6938402. 402. Any bingos? 402. 6938380. 380. We got a bingo. 6938422. 422. Another bingo. 6938439. 439. Another one. 6938392. 392. Do we have a 392? 392. And again, the other one was 402. Do we have a 402? No 402? You got 402? You got to go. Oh, you got it? Okay. All right, we're good. So again, I think the Dante Club have done a great job for lunch. I just want to thank the crew for a great lunch. Now we have a couple quick little presentations before we get our guest speaker up here. One of the requests was in regards to huddle expectations and how we can support you more through that, what a good huddle should look like. So I've asked Justin Roy from the mill to put together a few slides to help give you some information to help you out. So I'll get Justin up here. Justin,
thank you.
Here's your.
Thank you.
Click.
On the clicker. Okay. Let's see. Huddle expectations. Justin Roy. History of the pre-work huddle. The pre-work huddle, sometimes called toolbox talk, tailgate meeting, or 50 minutes of my life I'll never get back, is an informal safety meeting that focuses on topics related to specific job, such as workplace hazards and what's wrong with management. Meetings are normally short in duration and are generally conducted at the job site prior to commencement of a job or work shift. It's a very effective method to vent, fill out field level risk assessments, and cover all the ways the company makes things difficult when you have all the answers. Toolbox talks are also intended to facilitate sitting, eating, talking loudly while your supervisor drones on about this and that. The history of the pre-work huddle is a long and boring one. It dates back to prehistory, where archaeological evidence has shown that prehistoric supervisors would read the day-to-day operations of hunting and gathering verbatim by firelight. So not much has happened, blah, 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 blah. So, was that an effective way to communicate? Did that inspire confidence? Did I sound and look like a leader? Everybody in this room is a leader. Nobody is here because they're not good at what they do, or they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't have the ability to speak to people. So what are we saying? What are we saying to somebody when we don't prepare, when we don't know the content, when we yawn, if we are rolling our eyes at content? What are we saying? Not important. I don't believe in what I'm saying. That's good. Yep. So what does your huddle say about you? If you're good at public speaking, it says that you're a good leader. It says that you know what you're talking about. It says that you're the guy with a plan. What does our body language say? So I don't think anybody's totally awake at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, but you got to act like it. You can't be yawning. You want to be able to look people in the eye. You don't want to be slouched over or crossing your arms. What's important? What's important in a huddle? Pardon me? Interaction, that's important. Get the message out? Yep, absolutely. Make sure the message is understood, that's a good one. And maybe the content in the huddle covers all that stuff, But if we're saying it in a manner that doesn't speak physically to everybody in the room, we're not delivering a message, we're just reading it. So what's our goal? Set the tone for the day. Perfect. What else? Engage the workers. Motivate. Perfect. Make them aware of hazards. There's a million things that we can go on and on. We only have 15 minutes to deliver a huddle, usually in the morning, but we should have a goal, and it should be to direct the workers in a way that we expect them to be directed and to do what we expect them to do. So, thinking about step up in the 5 behaviors, I'm just going to kind of go through them all and just through some bullet points, have a conversation with everybody about how the 5 behaviors are part of the huddle. So know your content, right? You don't want to be reading verbatim the message that's on the screen. When we had the people who are reading the hypos and the PFOs, they didn't go up there and go, oh yeah, this one, and then just read it. They knew what it was. They kind of talked about it in bullet points, and we moved on. So that, to me, said that they knew what it was. They didn't just go up there and not know what they were looking for. Know your audience. So I think most of us are pretty experienced in mining, and I think that probably a large portion of the crews are experienced people. But if you have new people in the room, you have to speak to them as well. So one of the things that we're really bad at are abbreviations. LSRs, PFOs, HIPOs. If the new people in the room don't understand those abbreviations, it's jargon. It doesn't mean anything to them. Speak with passion, authority, confidence. So getting up here is not easy. I can attest to that right now. But if you want to really communicate with these people, you have to act like you want to be there. Maybe you don't. I don't necessarily want to be anywhere at 7 o'clock in the morning, but that's what happens. Commit to safety. So before we're miners or technicians or engineers, we're all safety professionals, right? Everybody who walks through the gate has an expectation that whatever it is that they're doing and whatever it is that they're delivering, is they're going to be doing it safely. The order matters. So what does the order of the huddle matter? Anybody? What if we put all of the things in front of the huddle that has nothing to do with safety? What if we're putting up there how many tons we should be pushing through the mill? How many rounds we should be blowing off? What does that say? That's right. Yep. So I've had some conversations about where the safety message should exist within the huddle. Should it be right at the beginning? Or should you go over the day's events and kind of talk about what's going on in the workplace and then develop your safety message? Anybody have an opinion on that? Sure. I know some places on the property do that, where the workers actually develop their own safety message. That's a good point. But what about safety message at the beginning versus the end? Sure, beginning and the end, reiterated at the end. I don't really have an answer for that, but it's just something to think about, really. What functions do the hypos and the PFOs have? So if we just go through the hypos and the PFOs and read them off and then we move on to the next one, what value do we get from these? What's the point of going over them if we're just going to kind of gloss over them just to get through them? There's a wall of text. We go over them and move on. Are we doing them any justice? I don't think so. I think we have to talk about it. We have to ask ourselves, can it happen here? What can we do to prevent it? And we also have to incorporate the golden rules. So when we get a hypo that involves working at height when you're cleaning the window on a piece of equipment, that's great to go over why it happened, but we can also ask everybody to pull up their golden guides and find the section in there where it asks, or where it states that this is against the rules. That's what the Golden Guide is all about. You are the gatekeeper, so not only step up, but step in. So this is your first opportunity to interact with your employees. So ask yourselves, are they fit for work? They're coming in, they look tired, they look not themselves. Is their PPE in order? Do they have a blue light on? Plan and align. It's kind of what the huddle's all about. Does everybody know what they're doing? I think that that's a pretty basic one, and I think that most of us succeed in doing that. Is everybody aware of what's going on in their workplace? So, if I'm working somewhere and there's some activity near me, I have to be aware of that. Does everybody have the knowledge to complete their tasks? Does everybody understand the bigger picture? So, if I ask somebody to move a pile from here to there, is that enough information? What if I'm asking them to move it from here to there so we can load a pattern or get some equipment in? So that gives them the ability to make an informed decision if they understand the bigger picture. They're not necessarily relying on you to babysit them through the entire thing. Foster collaboration. Listen to ideas. So somebody said that conversation is a big part of our interaction is a big part of the huddle. So when somebody has an idea, take it to heart. They're the people doing the work. They're the people at the face of the front line. So it's one thing to sit in a room and kind of decide what has to be done and try to do it. But somebody who's down there for 12 hours a day actually doing the work, they probably have something to say, and they probably have an idea that's worth listening to. Encourage conversation. So who said interaction? So if I were to say to you, if I were to ask you for a safety message and you gave me one and then I just moved on, that just means that we're doing the minimum, right? We've asked for a safety message, we're writing it down, now we're moving on. If you're a supervisor, it might not be a bad idea to kind of elaborate on that. Ask them why they think it's important, how can we benefit from it, and why it's the topic of the day. Opinions matter. So kind of listening to ideas. Everybody has their own opinion about how the work should be done and what we're doing to get it done. Listen to the people at the face. Don't let safety shares fall flat. So when you ask for a safety share and somebody gets up, which isn't an easy thing to do, and they share their ideas or they share a story, don't just move on. Elaborate on them. Ask them questions. Ask ourselves why it's important. What could have happened? Can it happen here? What could have been done to prevent it? Develop people. So, when your team succeed, you succeed. You set up your team in the morning, that reflects well on you. The behaviors you nurture becomes the cultures we all work in. So we're all benefiting from the culture that you're nurturing. We talk about safety culture all the time. It really starts with the morning huddle. That's our safety meeting that we have every day. Confidence is contagious. You act confident in your safety huddle, and your employees will be confident for the day. So, another little icebreaker. If nobody can read this, no, use it for talking like this. So, we can go into a room and kind of bash our words into the ground and read these things verbatim and hope that it gets across, but I don't think we're actually communicating. All we're doing is reading things. The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taking place. And I don't really know what George Bernard Shaw was talking about in reference to, but what it says to me is that it's not enough to just go there and read the things and read off of a paper and go, okay, safety message, hypos, everybody knows what they're doing, on and on. We have to actually engage them. We have to talk to them. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Again, I just want to thank Justin. Great job. So there's, I think, a lot of information there, some good takeaways. It was quick, but it was a lot of information to be able to help. I think there's a lot of takeaways if you really sit down and listen to the content of what was shared. Take that back to you, tomorrow morning or your next lineup, and think about it. Step back at your lineup. Step back and say, hey, what are some of these that I can apply when I'm doing my lineups? How can I change it? How can I make it more lively? How can I get people leaving that lineup saying, hey, I know what the safety message is? Next up, I've asked Evan McDonald, our administration manager, to do a quick presentation in regards to our costs. You hear Mark. Mark's going to be doing his quarterly presentations coming up. I think he's starting the first one tomorrow morning. He'll talk about costs. And so I've asked Evan just to kind of cover some of the things and initiatives that we're going to be working on in order to get us where we need to be. So, Evan?
Hi. Rick put my slide together for me here. He did me the favor, so we'll see how in sync we are when I click this button. All right, we're fairly in sync. But to kick it off from a mental health awareness standpoint, I find myself every May kind of take it off the shelf. I hear a lot about it. I learn a lot about friends and family and all sorts of things I had no idea people were going with. And then I move on to June, and I get bogged down in my normal work, normal life, normal grind. Come August, without even thinking, that's back on the shelf, right? And it takes till the next May, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I have so many friends that might be dealing with depression or family members that are fighting this battle. And once again, I go through that whole cycle. So just challenging everyone in this room, myself included, is this year, try to not put it back on the shelf when it comes to, say, August, and you keep moving on, right? Because I think mental health should stay throughout the whole year. And moving on to cost. So Rick said it, we're looking at, from a credibility standpoint, there's safety, there's production, and then there's costs. I know right now a lot of how we communicate and measure our costs is a metric. It's often called ASIC. It's all-in sustaining costs. And I'm going to be looking for some feedback, so get ready. And if you're in the back, you're going to have to yell. But who knows what all-in sustaining costs actually is? When we throw up a number and we say 950, or who understands that in this room? Throw up your hand if you understand it. Okay, and that's what I expect too, right? Because this is a number we use to kind of guide the business, and the market likes it. But if people don't understand it, it's not doing what we need it to do, right? So what you could think of, just when you distill it down to something fairly basic, it's all of our costs to produce, plus all of our sustaining capital. So that's all the capital dollars we need to spend to do what we have to do, divided by the number of ounces we produce, right? So if you think of, say, a gold price at $1,250, just being easy, and then you see where the ASIC is, you can kind of get a high-level idea of how much cash flow the site's generating. So if I were to tell everyone in this room, our budget this year-to-date, was $947 an ounce for all-in sustaining costs, where do you think we sit? Just throw in a couple numbers. Come on, you can. 1,020, okay. To the right side, 1,020. 1150. Okay, so we are shooting high. In reality, it's 942. So that's a good number, right? You see that, you say, wow, we're $5 an ounce lower than our all-in sustaining costs, and that's what we're putting out. But something else where we don't want to get kind of lazy and blind to that is, if I were to say, like I said, that was costs and capital divided over ounces. But if I were to remove that capital, there's a metric called cash costs, and that's really just your costs divided by the number of ounces you produce. So if I were to tell you year-to-date, our cash cost budget was $648 an ounce, where do you think our actuals are sitting? You think they're right on, just like the ASIC? In reality, it's $741. So we are higher from a cost standpoint, and that's why, to keep that credibility, this is a battle that, as a site, we're going to be fighting for years to come, right? We've got Century coming online, or not coming online, but Century in the pipeline, Borden coming online. From production, there's a lot of things there that we can lean on. From safety, we've got a lot of great things going, and we're going to keep them going to keep that going down. But the costs, unless we actively try to manage them and fight them, we're not going to win that battle itself, right? So does anyone think, when I talk about costs, is there a silver bullet out there for costs where we could just say, you know what, let's just pull this lever and things are going to get good?
I'm not sure if people understand what it costs for everything we do, on a daily operation, from a plant all the way to a new scoop, whatever it is. They don't think they appreciate the value of what goes through the warehouse doors and onto operation.
Yeah, because Borden won't hear it.
You want to say it on mic?
Yeah.
I don't at all levels understand how much things cost.
Yeah.
Right from a clam, a kit to repair hoses, a roll of 50 feet of hose and everything else, right up to a new crusher system or equipment, whatever it is. I think we're oblivious to it because we mine gold. We think everything is just, great and groovy and everything else. And I don't think that, people understand that it costs a lot of money and we're not as efficient with our money as we could be.
Exactly. And like you said, it's easy to think, well, gold's worth a lot of money. We must have a lot of margin there, right? But in reality, if you don't manage it, it can get away from you quick. And that wasn't a plan, because when I'm going to talk about a couple of things we're doing to try to actively put ourselves in a position where we can attack these costs. The first one, and this is, as I say the words SA.
Before you go there.
Oh, yep, sorry, Mark.
So who makes more money? Base metal mining or gold mining? Base metal,
Yeah.
right? Because they move a lot more tons, right? So, like in the precious metal business, we work for our freaking money. Let me tell you. The other thing about base metal is they get 4, 5, 6 elements per ton. They get copper, they get lead, they get zinc, they get whatever else. We only get gold, folks. We get nothing else. Unless you're Penasquito, and then you can say, I'm producing for minus $100 an ounce because I have all these co-products.
Yeah.
We have no co-products, right? And I agree with Dave's point to a certain extent. Yes, we should know what things cost. But by the way, waste is waste is waste is waste. Whether you waste a 30-cent pen, or you waste a $100 hose, or you waste a whatever, it's still waste. Every little bit is waste. All right? So when I hear about things like just before Evan talks to you about some of the things that we're doing, I tell you some of the stories I've heard in my office in the last couple of months about costs. So we tried kitting for a while. Who knows what kitting is? Maintenance people should know what kitting is, right? Randy's going to laugh, but because he knows that I know the story. So Caterpillar used to kit kits for us for our trucks. So when you kit, what happens is you're going to do a 250-hour maintenance. So Randy would get a crate with everything he needed for a 250-hour maintenance on a skid. Same is true at Borden with the new Tamrock equipment, right? So starts doing the job, only needs half the parts. What do you think happens to the other half of the parts? Do you think they go back to Caterpillar? Well, what do you think? Do you think they go back in a warehouse on the shelf? I got news for you. A lot of them went in the dumpster. Because in SAP, we had no way to put them back on the shelf. All right? Or they get hidden somewhere. Somebody's ordered screens. Rush ordered screens. Come in the warehouse. You go outside, the very same screens are standing there. Why? Because they're not in inventory and we forgot they were there. So we're doing a rush job, an emergency job. What do? Instead of walking around the yard to see what we have, we ordered another set of screens, even though we had perfectly good ones sitting in the yard. Is that wasting money? I sure hope everybody's going like this. Hey, I got no problem with spending money, folks. I want to spend money. I want to spend money smartly. What I don't want to do is waste money.
Yeah.
So my message isn't, whatever he's going to say, it's not about mass layoffs. It's not about not getting the tools we need to do the job. It's about equipment damage. It's about throwing things out that we still could use. It's about being a little bit smarter about the way we use our resources. And you're going to hear in my quarterly tomorrow morning, it's about absenteeism. All right? We do those things smartly, we're not going to worry about ordering. We can order the best of everything. That doesn't matter. It's what we do with everything else that's costing us. Does that make sense?
Exactly, and that kind of lends itself to the silver bullet comment, right? Because in order to get to where we need to be, it's a lot of hard work, and it's not in one area. It's going to be everything. And it's from the small purchases up to the big ones. We're not just looking at big items and saying, hey, let's do that a little smarter. in order to move the needle and get to where Porcupine has to be, it's going to be tough. So one project we have going on right now, and that's the word where I said SAP. I know it's not everyone's favorite term to come out, but we've got an SAP cost hierarchy project going on right now, and it will be rolled out in the next couple months. And what this is this isn't a new iteration of SAP to kind of turn your life upside down. You really shouldn't notice very much about it, but there will be some changes to where you book things. There will be some training put out, and then some of the areas that fell flat with the team that initially rolled out, as far as making sure there's cards and people understand where and why they're booking things to certain areas, will be coming with it. And you ask, well, what's that do? But the whole point of this is to get costs into the activities of what's actually occurring. So right now, if we take a look and we try to review our costs and we say, you know what, we are a little higher. Our cash costs are $741. We thought they were $648. And then all of a sudden, as you start looking in and you've got supervisors in this room, general foremen, all the way up to superintendents, managers, everyone's going in, and there's too many lefts and rights, and there's just places to get lost, things that are where they shouldn't be. And all of a sudden, you're talking not about what you can do to fix things, but why the heck don't you understand what you're looking at, right? So what we're trying to do here is to just make all the costs digestible by activity and by area, so that we can take a look at where we're actually spending this money, where some of this wastage might be, and actively manage it. And it's kind of empowering it all the way down from the general foreman and supervisor level, so you understand what you should be spending and what you should be signing off on, as opposed to just seeing a rec and saying, yeah, looks good, I'm sure we have room for this, boom, signing and sending it out, right? One of the other ones we have going on, and Mark kind of alluded to it too, is a lot of this ends up coming back to the warehouse. And we do have a project going on right now, warehouse optimization, kind of dig down with Partners in Performance, who's a group. And what they're doing is, this isn't just owned by the warehouse, this is actually co-owned by Dawn. So there's been a lot of involvement from operations. So certain people in this room might have already been involved, but it's two steps. The first step is we're kind of setting the table for success. We got laydowns everywhere. We've got kind of phantom warehouses that, like Mark said, aren't particularly inventory, but that's how we've been ordering things and doing business. We're gonna have to clean that up and kind of set the table for success. So in the next few months, you should see some of the things that we've been keeping on site, for maybe a drill we haven't used forever, or an old rusted out piece for a pump we're never gonna go back to and use because it's just sitting there. We're gonna try to remove that and get that all off site. So we actually will create a bit of value for that. But the big thing in that is it's the wastage. When you take a look at how much stuff's sitting there, and it was, well, we direct charge this because we used it on this piece of gear and we thought we'd need another one, but then that day never came, or that person left, so the next person direct charged a different item. There's just all sorts of reasons where we're making it complicated on ourselves. And it's not the people in the room, but it's also the system too, right? So it's not the system in place with the warehouse is flawless. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and that's what the other part of it is taking a look at kind of the wiring of the warehouse and how we do what we do, and taking, well, not 3, but 10 steps back and saying, if we were to build Porcupine today, what would we build for a warehouse? Does anyone think if someone said they were going to build a site that looks just like Porcupine today, we'd land something similar to what we have? Many heads nodding. For Borden, there's no heads nodding. Yes. And that's true, but we don't know where we want to go, right? We know we're not satisfied with what we have. We know often we're not providing the service we need to provide, and as a result, when you break that trust, people start circumventing the system, right? So we need to kind of get that fully in place in order to build that relationship and provide that service level. And without knowing what your end result is, we're never going to get there. We kind of just keep kicking the can down, saying, we're not happy with our current warehouses, it's confusing, it's not providing what we need. Maybe we'll tinker this, or we'll make a little one here. So I want to get in kind of a roadmap and saying, well, maybe this is too far and we don't want to go all the way there because there's a lot of investment and that's a big change and we're turning things upside down. But maybe here about halfway, that's comfortable, we can get a lot of improvements and we'll go there. So that's a work in progress right now, but that's something else we'll be working on. And then one last item, because I know I got to get off here, but sole sources. I sent out an email, I think a week ago, mentioning all sources are going to be approved by Mark or a designate. But does anyone have an idea of why that came out? Someone know? So sole source document, thanks Mark, good point, is if you're going to purchase something over $50,000 and you don't get 3 quotes, you need a sole source document signed. So you think of yourself, if you were buying something for yourself over $50,000, what's the odds you wouldn't go get 3 prices? I know me, probably pretty slim, right? And there are bigger items and there's routine items, but how often do you think we're doing that here in a week? 15 is a fairly conservative estimate, likely more than that. And that's when we're starting to look and say, and I know some of it's planning, and you say, we need to do this immediately, or I need it next week. But we got to get to a place, too, where we're seeing some of this ahead, and we're not just fighting the fires directly in front of us, right? So we're hoping this project will help out with that. But to kind of give a little bit of an example of where some value is, I had one come across my desk from the IT group 2 weeks ago. And this is for 6 copiers and printers. If people don't know, we lease those. We don't buy them. Companies take care of them. They come in a lease. They're not all packaged in at once. This was just 6 printer scanners at Porcupine on site. They're going to sign a 36-month deal with who's been doing them because they've been doing a good job and we got a good relationship. And we got a sole source to sign that. Kicked it back and said, let's get quotes. Sure, they've been doing a good job and they're a nice vendor, but what harm does it have? Let's do it. Anyone got an idea what we saved in 3 years for 6 scanners? $25,000. And that's just, it shows when you kind of take the easier path, or we've been doing this, or yeah, they're a good provider. If we can save $25,000 on 6 scanners, think of all the spend the people in this room control. There's a lot more potential there, right? And then that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Evan, for sharing that discussion with us. It's one of those discussions a lot of times we don't think about it, we don't take that time, so it's good that he shared some of that information with us. I'm just going to set up for our guest speaker, so just give me a couple minutes. So real quickly, to get everybody's attention, I'm gonna play a quick video prior, and then I'll introduce Darby. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Darby Allen.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? My name is Darby Allen. I was the Director of Emergency Management for the Horse River Fire, which was the Horse River Fire that went through McMurray in 2016. I was in charge of the evacuation and initial extinguishment phases. I was in charge for 14 days and 14 nights. So enough about that for the moment. I just want to thank you very much for inviting me. I want to thank you very much for being here. I want to thank Rick and Teresa for looking after me wonderfully and the hospitality. It's my first time in Timmins, and it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much. This afternoon, I'm just going to tell you a story. It's the first thing you need to realize is this story is not about me. This story is about some incredible first responders who tried their very best to extinguish a fire that was not going to be extinguished. And it's about approximately 90,000 people who incredibly and quite magically managed to vacate a small town in northern Alberta with one way in and one way out. So I hope you enjoyed the story today. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go through some day-by-day events. We're going to talk about how that went, then we'll talk a little bit about things that went well and things that didn't go well. I'll talk a little bit about leadership, crisis leadership, and then at the end there's some pictures that were just kind of special to me, and then that'll take about an hour, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end, should you have any questions. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Birmingham, England, a long time ago. And I was not a great high school student. I joined the Royal Navy when I was 17. I met my wife when I was in the Royal Navy. I came out the Royal Navy in 81. I got married in 1980 to the lovely lady with the sunglasses on. We're still married, thank God. And I have two wonderful boys, Gary on the left there, Stephen on the right, and that's my daughter-in-law, Stephanie. I like to fish. I like to kick a ball every now and then. And I'm retired from the fire service now. I just go and speak now. I do some consulting work. I also work for Queen's University, and life's pretty good. So that's a blessing for me. I enjoyed 29 years in the fire service immensely. I enjoyed every day of it, and I became aware earlier on in my career that it was the little things that make a difference in life, both at home and at work. The little things that put those building blocks in place that makes the overall big things happen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the little things later on. I think it was a battalion chief in New York that said, when a person decides to become a firefighter, their greatest act of bravery has already been achieved, and everything else is in the line of duty. And I would certainly echo those sentiments. So let's step back then to the last week in April 2016. Not an unusual time in McMurray. We get grass fires there all the time. We get forest fires there all the time. We'd had 4 fires that week. We'd managed to extinguish that fire, which is not what we typically did. What was unusual about this time was the ground conditions, they said, were the driest it had been for 50 years. So incredibly dry. We'd had long few weeks of temperatures around 28, 30 degrees, so pretty hot. And importantly, the relative humidity was around about 10 to 12% every day. So in the forestry and agriculture firefighting world, they call that crossover conditions. When the ambient temperature is higher than the relative humidity, that's called crossover. And the more of a gap, the worse it is. So we had crossover conditions in the first 4 of the first 7 days of this fire. So we were in trouble, and we didn't even know it. And unfortunately, the rest, as they say, is history. So day 1, this fire started on the 1st of May 2016. I'd been at work, it was a Sunday morning, I'd been doing some other stuff associated with these other fires. A man called Bernie Schmidt called me as a manager of forestry and agriculture. He said, there's another fire started up, fire number 9, it's around 20 kilometers away to the west. Don't worry about it, we're all over it. So I said, okay. And for whatever reason, and I honestly don't know why to this day, I was worried about this fire. And I went into REOC, Regional Emergency Operations Center, and called a couple of people, and we went in and we had a little bit of a huddle, and we tried to think about what this fire was going to do. It was a long way off. The wind direction was favorable for us. I'll show you a little map in a minute. So after all said and done, and we'd done our discussing, we were confident that this fire was going to pass us by to the southeast of the city. And we thought that for that day and the next day. However, you know, trying to err on the side of safety, the mayor declared a state or local emergency at 10 p.m. that day. Prior to that, I'm the fire chief. Now I become the director of emergency management. So, you know, you're basically the boss of the whole thing. We evacuated 3 areas. We sent them to a leisure facility in town, and they had beds there, they had food. We were in good shape. We set up our incident command system fairly quickly. Priorities: save life, save critical infrastructure, and save profit. And it's fair to say, in the ensuing hours and the ensuing days, our priorities changed to save life, save life, save life. I can honestly tell you, I've never wanted anything more in my entire life, work-related. So it was all-consuming. We wanted it with every fiber of our being, and you know, at the end of the day, we were so pleased and so happy that around 88,000 people managed to evacuate safely without the loss of life. This is a picture taken from my BlackBerry from Fire Station, which is where REOC is. On this day, the fire grew in size a little bit. It grew larger, got a little closer to town, but we were still confident by our fire modeling and experts, science experts, that this thing was going to pass us by. Unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen. We had a NOTAM in place, notice to airmen, so all air traffic over Fort McMurray was being controlled by forestry and agriculture. A little bit of information: the air traffic over McMurray was more intense at the height of this fire in any 1 hour period than is there over Toronto Pearson right now. So that is a massive equipment up there, and my message there is, don't care about what you read. We tried to put this fire out, and it just wasn't meant to be. So everyone did their very best. Day 3 is the day that kind of made the headlines. It's the day that the mass evacuation took place. My day started, I'd been at home that night. I was going to work around 6:30 in the morning, and Bernie called me again, and how you doing? Good. He said, I don't have good news for you. Okay, what's happening? The first piece of good news was that the fire had come closer into town and it jumped the Athabasca River, and that was a significant landmark in what we were about to do, and I'll show you that on a map in a minute. And the second thing was the wind direction had changed from a south-southeasterly direction to a north-northeasterly direction, which I knew right there that was going to then take that fire, which was currently out of town a little bit. It was basically going to take the fire over the entire city. So not the best news to start off your day. And I went into REOC, and we started talking to people. I'll tell you about that conversation with my team a little later, but basically we started mandatorily evacuating areas of the community. Mandatory evacuation is not something you do lightheartedly. You know, you're turfing people out of their homes, so you only do it when it's absolutely necessary, and it was absolutely necessary. People needed to leave, and they needed to leave in a hurry. The first 3 communities we evacuated was Beacon Hill, Abasand, and Grayling Terrace. Abasand lost approximately 70–75% of the structures within that community. Beacon Hill lost about the same. Grayling Terrace is plonked right in the middle, and they lost 3 homes. And I have no idea why. It's just the way the fire behaved. We lost a total of 2,200 structures and homes, 2 hotels. We didn't lose any critical infrastructure. So we lost a total of about 20% of the homes within Fort McMurray, which is incredible because this thing was nasty. This thing took over our entire city. So although we felt bad as firefighters afterwards and we felt guilty, it really is a success story, and they should be thanked for all of that. So here's a little map. It's not great, but I think I got a pointer on it. Yeah. So this is downtown McMurray right here. This white line is the highway, 63, one way in, one way out. This is the main bridge that separates the north and the south. This is the bulk of the population, Timberley and Dickinsfield and Wood Buffalo in that area. Approximately 40 or 50,000 people live in that area there. This is the Athabasca River. And that red blob is where the fire was on the morning of the 3rd of May. Previously, the fire was going in this direction because primarily of the wind. And on the morning of the 3rd, or during the morning of the 3rd, it changed to this direction. So you can see there, you don't have to be a fire expert to know that we are in trouble. And this fire at the time was approximately 5 kilometers wide and about 30 kilometers long. So now we're fighting a fire front of 30 kilometers wide, and it's proceeding to eat up this direction. And it's eating it up as a hurry. When you think that this thing was out here somewhere yesterday, it came in about 28 kilometers in a period of just over 24 hours. This is the Athabasca River here, and this is where the fire spotted on the other side of the Athabasca River. That distance is 1,200 feet. It's almost unthinkable that a fire could jump that far, but it did jump that far. And now it's got, once it gets ground over here, it's got full access to the bulk of our population. So in the next ensuing days, it filled in this whole triangle here. It went up the river, it threatened the bridge, the water treatment plant was right there. It devastated this area of Wood Buffalo. It went up the west side of the city, came back into the top, devastated Parsons Creek. At the same time, it jumped the highway here, took out all this area. We've saved downtown. It went up and met up, and then it went up into the oil sands communities, and it eventually went north and ended up in Saskatoon. I'll give you some numbers on the fire a little later. So this fire, I've been a firefighter a long time. I'm primarily a structural firefighter, but certainly I've had my share of experience in wildland. This is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. It was as far left as you could see, as far right as you could see, and as high as you could see. It was overpowering, overwhelming, and terrifying. You know, I'm not embarrassed to tell you I was terrified, as everybody was. But you regroup and you do what you can. So think about yourselves now. Think about yourselves as being husbands and wives and brothers and sisters. And you're at home or you're at work. In McMurray, that would typically mean if one's at home and the other person's at work, they're about an hour away. Their kids are probably going to be about an hour or so away also. 45 minutes at school, and hope the sound file works. And then, you know, you're listening to your car radio, or you're listening at home, and you hear this. Maybe you don't hear this. No, it doesn't. Don't worry about it. It's okay. So the sound I was going to play you was an actual tape of an emergency alert that went out to the community in the radio. And it said to people initially, we're suggesting you vacate. And then as time went on, it was you will vacate, you will get out the community, and you have 30 minutes to get out the community. Imagine getting that message, and your wife is 45 minutes away, your husband is 45 minutes away, and you don't know where your kids are. You know, they're at school maybe. And yet the people did it. They were unbelievable. I'm not saying they did it in half an hour, but they got their stuff together, and they acted calmly, they acted with caring, they acted with bravery, and they headed out of town. And that is not easy for people to do. And I'll certainly talk more about the people as we go. So we have got entire areas of the city on fire now. We're into kind of midday on the 3rd. The fire has come into town. It's filled up that triangle I showed you. The first structure we lost was a 7-story hotel, just decimated it, gone. We had a propane store on fire initially in a community called Gregoire. We've got barbecue cylinders flying through the air and exploding on a regular basis. We had a 1-ton propane cylinder explode, flew 400 feet across a road, landed on a bunch of cars in a car park. Nobody was hurt or injured. If that was the only amazing thing I told you today, it would still be amazing. But it's not the only amazing thing. Around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it was on the 3rd, I phoned the Northern Lights Hospital. It's a 7-story structure. And I told them that they had to evacuate the hospital. They thought I was joking. And I said, no, really, you got to get out of town. So they said, okay. And they managed to evacuate that hospital in around 4 or 5 hours. There were 105 patients in the hospital. There were 62 critical care patients. They had buses, they had taxis, they had flatbed trucks, they had whatever they could get down there, and people would come down and they'd be carried down, and they had their IVs and their oxygen. They sent quite a few south, they sent a lot north, they brought aircraft in and they put these sick people on and they got them out of town. That is something else that is quite extraordinary in my opinion. We became aware, of course, that we were sending a lot of people out of town and we had to find somewhere to go. And I called a man called Tim Reed, who I knew. He runs Northlands Edmonton. I said, Tim, you've heard about what's going on? Yeah, what do you need? I said, I need you to set up an evacuation center for me, if you wouldn't mind. Sure. He said, how many people do you think I'll be getting? And I said, about 50,000. And the phone went quiet for a little bit, and he said, okay. And I said, thank you very much. And I didn't get to see him for a few months till I got to shake his hand. But there were a total of 13 or 14 evacuation centers set up around the province and other provinces. And they were great. They were wonderful places. People were volunteering there. You could go and get a bed. You could go and get food. You could get clothing. You could get toiletries. And people lived there for, weeks. So that was quite special. We didn't care too much about critical infrastructure in those first few days of the fire, but we knew we had to keep that water treatment plant running, and we knew that we needed to keep that bridge open. The bridge, of course, we still had people in the north, and if that bridge failed, then they wouldn't have been able to get out. The water treatment, obviously, if you're fighting fire, you need water. And there are many unsung heroes in this fire, and people who don't get talked about. And there were 4 guys working in that water treatment plant that morning, and they stayed there for 10 days, and they kept that plant running. And you couldn't breathe down there, guys. It was black, it was smoky, and it was nasty. The building caught fire at one time, and we had to put the building out. And they still stayed there. And they are amazing men, and they should be honored for what they did. And I really do appreciate everything they did. This is a slide taken from the Stretcher Highway by the hospital. This is where a lot of the video footage came from, because that section of forest literally overwhelmed that section of the highway where a lot of people were sitting in traffic. We've got 30 minutes notice to all residents now. The whole place is on a mandatory evacuation, and it's bumper to bumper traffic. It's busy. But what I would say to you is it was not panic. People were calm. People were incredibly calm, because you would expect them almost to panic, but they didn't. And if a couple of vehicles had broken down, and of course they did break down, and it blocked all that traffic, we would have been in complete nightmare. And yet the people got out of their cars, they bounced the vehicle off the side of the road into the ditch, they got the people out of that vehicle, they put them in their own vehicle, and they proceeded to go out of town. A normal drive out of town from the north to get out to the south is probably half an hour, 40 minutes. And on this day, it was taking anywhere between 3 and 5 hours. So it was terrifying. Spoke to a young lady afterwards who I think kind of epitomizes what went on that day, the type of person that was there that day. She's 27 years of age. She's a mother of 2, her and her husband. She gets the deal that you've got to evacuate. She can't contact her husband. She doesn't know where he is. And she grabs her kids, and she gets in a little Honda Civic. She's got one child in the front seat, one in the back seat. She's got a black Labrador in the middle, and she's got somebody else's 2 kids in the back seat of her car because they can't find their mum and dad. And she gets to this stretch of highway, and that fire starts coming over her vehicle. It's that hot that it is blistering the paint on her vehicle, and yet she doesn't panic. She doesn't get out and start running and screaming, and nobody did. They stayed where they were, and they fought it out. And that is very, very brave and very, very special. And I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And they showed tremendous fortitude, and they're wonderful people. It was the first evacuation that I'm aware of that was led on social media. And prior to me getting into this Director of Emergency Management role as a fire chief, I had mixed feelings on social media. Right? You know, there's pros and cons with it. But on this day, when we were evacuating everybody, we didn't really know how we were going to get the message out. You know, we knew that we couldn't phone everybody because we don't know everybody's phone number. We knew that we wouldn't be going around the streets with a foghorn. We didn't know how to do it. And a man called Jordan Redshaw, he's 28 years of age, he worked in communications. He came to see me and he said, we can do this through social media. We'll do it on Facebook, we'll do it on Twitter, and we'll just keep pumping out messages, and the people will get the message. And I said, really? He's like, yeah. Trust me, Chief, it'll be okay. And I said, okay, let's go. And that's what we did. And it worked very well for us. The theory being, of course, that if you don't have a phone, and most people do nowadays, that you know somebody who does have a phone, and they'll talk, and indeed that's what happened. The message went out very quickly. I think there was something like 3,200 tweets done by us in the first 4 days of this twat. So there was a lot of information being pumped out. A little bit about firefighting operations. I've been a firefighter a long time, and as I said, I've never seen anything like this before, but those initial communities that were hit, the Beacon Hill and the Abasand, we were in those communities fighting fire. And we were losing. We were losing big time. And we were going to lose those communities, and my fire chief operations guy, who's now the fire chief up there, named Jody, he came to see me, and he said, you know, we've got to do something different. I said, we do. We're going to have to strategically move and set up in areas where we can make the most difference, because we can't fight this fire. It's too big, it's too vast, it's too intense. So we did. We pulled our people out, and we moved them to areas where we thought we could make a difference, and that is not, it's not an easy order to give, and it's not easy on those guys to come out. They don't want to come out because they're busy and they're fighting fire. So I'm confident that if we left them in there, they would have died. End of story. And I wasn't prepared to let them do that. So I'm happy with that decision we made, and the fact that we saved 80% of the properties is testament to, you know, we did some things right. So it's difficult for those guys fighting that fire. It's difficult physically, it's difficult mentally, but that's what they do. You know, they went out there on day one, they didn't come back for days and days. We didn't have a lot of food, we didn't have a lot of water, they just worked very hard. Physically, throughout the fire, all the thousands of firefighters we had, in the end, we had a sprained ankle and a twisted knee, which in itself is unbelievable. And as far as I know, nobody is having any ramifications physically from this fire. Mentally, it's not such a great story. The people in general are struggling up there mentally with what happened, and some of those first responders are still not back to work. And I know you've had a talk today on mental wellness, but I'm going to give you my pitch. I was a firefighter a long time. I didn't care about that stuff for a long time. I'm fine. I don't need to worry about that. It's all good. And I didn't avail myself of help. And during this fire, I was asked constantly by people, you okay? Do you need to talk? No, I'm good, I'm good. And it went on for months, and I kept saying I was good. And one day my wife sat me down and she said, I want to have a word with you. And I said, what's that? She said, I got news for you. You're not good. And you're not okay. And I want you to go and talk to somebody about it. Well, I'm not that bright, but I'm not completely stupid. So when your wife tells you it's time to go, it's time to go. So I did. And I felt better for it. and I appreciate you taking the time to tell me that. And my message is, everybody has different challenges in life. Everyone has different things, different jobs. But we don't need to feel that there is any stigma with this anymore, right? If you've got a problem, go on to talk to someone about it. You don't have to tell the world, but you also don't have to make excuses about it. You don't have to make an excuse and say, I'm going to the dentist. You say, I need to take some time. I'm going to go and see my therapist. And if someone wants to tell them, you can tell them to shove it where the sun don't shine, right? That's not the world we live in anymore. We need to get into that mindset. On day 4, at first light, I was extremely worried about what we would find on the streets of Fort McMurray. I was honestly perceiving that we would find hundreds, if not thousands, of vehicles burned up with people in them. And I didn't want to go and look, but, you know, you've got to go and look. So my lovely assistant, Bev, and I got in her car, and what at the time it was, 5:30, 6 in the morning. It's black, it's smoky, you can't see very much, and we're driving around the streets. And we don't see a living soul. We don't see anybody. It was the most wonderful thing I've never seen in my life. I couldn't believe it. And for the first time, I started to think that maybe, you know, maybe we got everybody out. And I wasn't confident yet. I still felt that we would find people or hear about people. But it was the first time I got to think that maybe it had happened. This is a picture of the Ryan family, and the man in the red shirt, his name is Cranley. Cranley was a deputy chief of mine. And on the 4th of May, around about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 185 kilometers south of Fort McMurray, there was a motor vehicle accident, and his daughter, Emily, and his nephew, Aaron, died in that motor vehicle accident. So although there were no direct fatalities as a result of this fire, these people were evacuating. So I like to mention them as a sign of respect for them. They're a lovely family, and they're good friends of mine, and I just think it's the right thing to do. So the province declared a provincial state of emergency around 2:15 on this day, and that meant now that we had all those resources available to us. We were on our own up to that point, and the province sent up a thing called Task Force 2, which is a team of 250 people, firefighters, medics, mental wellness professionals, cooks, whatever, right? There was lots of people that came to help us, and we truly appreciated it. The provincial participation and support we got was second to none. In my 14 days and 14 nights, I never was told no once. And I asked for a lot of stuff. And they were magnificent. They supported us. They were fantastic. At about 2 o'clock in the morning on the 4th of May, a lady calls me and I pick up the phone. Can I help you? She said, good evening, sir. My name's Jennifer. I work for the province finance department. I said, okay, how you doing? You know, I said, it's late for you to be working in the finance department. She said, yes, sir. I'm calling to tell you about your budget. So I said, oh, that's great. I said, I'll be honest with you, I haven't really given this much thought to my budget up to now, but you go ahead. And as I'm talking, you know, she's talking, I'm a little bit fuzzy, and I hear $1 million thrown out. So I said to her, Jennifer, I'm not that bright, but I know $1 million isn't going to go far in this fire. And she said, no, sir, you have a one-time spending limit of $1 million. 10 seconds later, you can spend another $1 million. 10 seconds later, you can spend another $1 million. I said, I love that budget. I have no problem with that budget whatsoever. And I said, just as a matter of interest, what would be my overall spending limit? And she said, you don't have to worry about your overall spending limit. I said, it's just getting better and better, right? So I thanked her for her time, and we went back to work. So, yeah, wonderful people. I'm going to tell you the story about how we came up with this plan a little bit later, but we ended up sending approximately 30,000 people to the north. They went to our oil sands partners. We had no idea where we were sending them at the time, but that's where they went to. They have work camps, and they housed the people there. They fed them, they watered them, they looked after them, and it was incredible. Some of them actually flew out from there, but the bulk of them, we had two plans. We ended up with the convoy idea. We had to bring them out. And it was an RCMP vehicle in the front, 40 vehicles, RCMP vehicle in the back, and they basically drove out of there. and they would have to stop every now and then because that fire would come over the highway, but they got out there safely, thank God. A little bit of information on the fire. At the start of this fire, I had 32 guys on duty. When I say guys, I mean men and women. 32 guys on duty. I had a total of 150 operational staff, full-time, and they all came in, every one of them. Nobody left. They worked long and hard. I had about 100 guys and girls came in from industry, firefighters, and I had about 100 volunteers from our volunteer departments that came in. So initially we had about, 300 or so. And then when the province came up, they brought more. So at the height of this fire, there would be 540 structural firefighters working this fire at any one time. With respect to forestry and agriculture, the guys in the yellow shirts, there was around 2,100 of those guys. They came from all over this country. In fact, different areas of the world to help fight this fire, and that's both ground and air attack. The air attack was significant. There's the numbers: 77 helicopters, 18 tankers, 270 pieces of equipment. It was a massive, massive undertaking. And with all that, we still couldn't put it out. So, but we managed to keep the people safe, which is the main thing. It grew to approximately 1.5 million acres. It's not the largest fire in Canadian history, but it's up there. It's second or third, I think. It's certainly the largest fire that caused a human evacuation. It was declared under control on July the 5th, 16, and I believe it wasn't declared extinguished until, I don't know the date, but I think it was February of 17. So truly, truly incredible efforts by the people, by the first responders. You couldn't have asked anything more from anybody in your entire life. They were heroes, and I don't bandy that word around lightly. The Canadian participation from across this wonderful and fine country of ours made you just proud to be able to call yourself Canadian. We were inundated, firstly with money, but secondly with offers of whatever we wanted. And our challenge was, how do we keep up with this? Where are we going to put it all? How are we going to use it? But it was truly wonderful. Premier of Alberta came to see me, the Prime Minister came to see me, and they visited and they cared and they promised that they would look after us, and they did. So what have I realized since? I've realized, most of all, that it's all about team. And I've heard team mentioned here a lot this morning. You can't do it. You can't do it without team. I had my own individual team in Rio. We had first responders, police, fire, medics. That team, and I include the people themselves in that team, the people who vacated. And we had one goal, and one goal was to save life. And everybody has to be on board with that goal. No different than at work. You need to be on board with it, and you need to mean it, and you need to try and follow through on that. I think those three words epitomize what you needed up there at the time, both in the public sector and for the first responders. You needed grit, you needed determination, and you needed perseverance, because it felt like it was never, ever going to go away. And there are days where you don't feel that great, but you needed those three things to keep going. I found that if you trust the people you work for, and I mean really trust them, when you tell them to do something, in this role, when I tell them to do something, I didn't have time to come back and check. Can you do this for me? Yeah, sure, and I'm away and I'm doing something else. If you truly trust them, they will do magnificent things. And in turn, they will trust you. And trust, in my opinion, is the most important thing about leadership. There are four major reasons, in my opinion, why we successfully evacuated so many people. First of all, I've heard safety mentioned here a lot today. Safety in McMurray is a safety culture that I haven't seen in any other place I've lived. There's a lot of oil sands workers up there, and they live and breathe. They do all those things that you're doing, those toolbox talks and all those things, and they live and breathe safety. And I feel when they came home, they brought that safety home with them. And that led to that calmness and no panic and people looking after each other and not getting too freaked out by a truly, horrendous event. We managed to make some timely decisions. I wish we could have made them sooner, but you can only act on what you know. So we managed to make some decisions which helped the people to get out. The twinning of the highways is important, and I haven't, there are 2 reports done about this fire. I haven't even seen it in the reports. A year before, the highway that came into town, in and out town, and the highway through town itself was a single lane highway. And then the highway got twinned, and it was completed not long before this fire. If we had not had that twinned highway, we would not have had the road space to get the cars on the highway, and many, many more people would have died. That's the reality of it. I don't want to think about that too much, but that would have been true. And most of all, the actions of the people were significant in the success of this evacuation. Like I've said, they were brave, they were courageous, they were caring. They took the time to look after each other and wake neighbours up out of basements and get people that they didn't know, take people's family members. And people left town and they didn't have their family members. They didn't meet up for 2 or 3 days. That's traumatic on people, but they were incredible. Something I underestimated was pets. I didn't give a lot of thought about it. I don't own a pet, maybe that's why. But traditionally, if I ask this room, there'll be about 60 or 70% of you that own pets. And by pets, I mean hamsters, dogs, cats, spiders, lizards, whatever. So when we're evacuating the people on the 3rd, my phone is going, it's going consistently. For every 4th or 5th call, it would be, something like this. Hello, Chief, my name's Sue. I can't get home right now, but we live at 123 Sparrowhawk Drive, and we have a black Labrador, and you need to go and get our dog. And I would say, Sue, I hear, but I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. We are in the business of saving human lives today, and we don't have time or the resources or the people to go and save all the pets. And they would be ballistic down that phone. They would be screaming at me, and they would be calling me all the names under the sun. And I couldn't do anything for them, and I just had to keep saying I'm sorry, and then eventually I would have to hand the phone to someone else because they would just keep screaming. And I, take their details and we'll figure something out. So in the days that ensued, we needed to figure out a plan, and RCMP and by law went door to door on the places we knew where there was a pet. They gained an entry into the house or the apartment. They made contact with the pet. They let the pet out to go to the washroom if needed. They left food for the pet. And that morphed into a program where they knocked on every single door in Fort McMurray and found out if there were pets still there. And they continued to do that program for 20 days, and it was amazing. And it ended up where we came to the time where we evacuated 1,300 pets. We built a web page with, this is your pet, there's a picture of your pet, this is the address it was found at, this is the sanctuary it's been taken. You could go on there and click and go and find your animal. It's the little things that make a difference, and it made a big difference to the people, and we're very proud of that work. You can't move aquatic creatures. Who knew? I didn't know that. So the lizards had to stay where they were, but they continued to feed them, and they did so for the duration until the people came back, and they came back roughly about 4.5, 5 weeks after the fire. The mayor of McMurray, she came back into town, and I picked her up and took her home, and she was worried about what she would find. Her house was fine. It wasn't hurt by fire at all. But she was a bit tense, and she asked me if I wanted to go in with her when we pulled up, and I said, no, you go ahead, ma'am. She went into the house, and she came out about 10 minutes later, and she's crying. And I said, how's it looking? She said, it's fine. She said, it's perfectly fine. And I said, oh, that's great, And she said, when I opened the front door, all I could smell was the air freshener in the downstairs bathroom. And she said my goldfish was swimming around on the dining room table. And I said, happy days. And I went back to work. This is a couple of quotes, not the top, but the bottom two are a couple of quotes that a friend of mine sent me after the fire. I worked closely with him during the fire, and he'd been going on the internet, and he read this, and he said, I thought you might like these, he said, because I think this is something you may have written. And I said, well, I really appreciate it, and certainly if I was eloquent enough, I may have written something like this, but I really like these words, and I just want to read them to you. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. If anybody tells you they weren't scared, they're up at the time, they're BSing. I don't care what profession you were, it was scary. I was not scared personally for my own safety. I felt that, I'd be okay, but I was terrified for the people and for their families and all those other things. And there were dark moments and dark times where I was questioning what we were doing and how we were doing it and would we get to the end of it. And you get those nights when you're sitting on your own and you're thinking about it and you want your mum to come walking down the hallway and give you a big hug and tell you everything's going to be okay. But unfortunately, your mum doesn't come. If you want the cooperation of humans around you, you must make them feel that they are important. And you do that by being genuine and humble. I think those are wonderful words, and I certainly would have written them if I was that eloquent, but it's important. It's important to treat people respectfully, decently, politely, and don't get too full of yourself, right? Be down to earth, and I think that's important. So I think those are two nice quotes. Those quotes were actually written by a man called Nelson Mandela, which I'm sure you may have heard of him. So what did I learn about myself? Well, if you'd have asked me a week before this fire, could I do something like this, I would have said no. If they'd have come up to me, you've got to evacuate the whole town, the whole town's going to be on fire, you can have 5,000 people working for you, blah, blah, blah. I would have said no, you need to get another guy, because I'm not that good. I don't think I can do it. But you find yourself in the seat, an hour goes by hour, and now people are relying on you and they trust you, and it's something that you do. And anybody else would have been in the chair, would have been just fine too, but on that day, it just happened to me. So I'm proud and honored to have been part of this successful evacuation. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership and a little bit more about the little things, because I said how I thought the little things made a big difference. When I was driving to work that day and I found out that the fire had gone on the other side of the river, and I found out that the wind direction has changed, it's obviously important for me to share that information as soon as I can. So I went into REOC, we mandatorily evacuated a couple of areas, and then I got the whole group together, and there was about 40 people in the room at the time. And I told them that they were going to be in for a terrible day. I told them it was probably going to be the worst day of their life and the most challenging day of their life, but we were going to do it together, and we were going to do the very best we could. I couldn't tell them what was going to be the end result of that day, but I told them that it might be bad. And obviously I told them the facts around what the fire was doing, and I told them that it was the little things that were going to make a difference. And it wasn't the big decisions that I made or other managers made. It was all the little things that they did that were going to make that difference. And if we all did our job and did our job well, that was all I could ask them. I said to them, if your job is to send an email, make sure it's spelled correctly, make sure the subject matter's there, make sure it's going to where you need it to go, and press the send button and away you go. And if it's the only email you send all day, I don't care, because it might be the most important email you ever send in your whole life. I said, if you are asked to change the tissue in the bathrooms, please do it. Don't think it's a menial job. We're not going to live in unhygienic conditions. We're going to keep our house clean here, and that's part of it. So don't think it's menial. It's a little thing, and the little things make a difference. I said, if you go to the coffee pot at 3 o'clock in the morning and you pour out the last cup of coffee, make another freaking pot of coffee. It's the little things that make a difference, and it drives people crazy when they don't get a coffee when they want one. I told this team in front of me that if I had a jigsaw puzzle and I had a piece for all of you, and we threw it out in the room and I asked you to pick up all those pieces, we're going to try and build a puzzle in front of us. And our job at the end of the day is to build that puzzle. And if one piece is missing, like this one is, if one piece is missing, it doesn't matter if it's the bathroom tissue guy or the King of England who misses that piece, the puzzle is not complete. And our job is to complete that puzzle. And I'm going to suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that they built an amazing puzzle. I'm going to tell you a little story about a lady called Brenda, who firsthand showed me that the little things make a difference in a person's life. Brenda is a 55-year-old mother of three, single mother of three. She's lived in Fort McMurray a long time. She's worked for the fire department a long time. She is not slow to give you her opinion. She uses the F word on occasion. She's a lovely lady. And when I got the fire chief's job, I'd been doing the job for a couple of months, and I used to go in my office and I would grab a coffee cup and I'd walk down a long hallway. I would say, "Good morning, Teresa. Good morning, Marie. Good morning, Mahesh." And they would say good morning. And then I would take a sharp left and go straight to the coffee pot. And I would miss Brenda's door. And this morning she came into the kitchen and she was a bit huffy. I'm like, "What's happening? What's the matter?" She said, I'll tell you what the matter is. She said, "I've worked here a long time." She said, "And I'll probably be working here after you're gone. And every morning I hear you come in and I hear your footsteps come down that hallway and I hear you say good morning to those people, and then you don't come and say good morning to me. And it really pisses me off." And I've laughed about it with her since, and I can laugh about it now, but I'll tell you, when she told me, I felt like someone had stabbed me in the stomach. It upset me, and I was embarrassed. And I told her I was really sorry, and I told her that it meant a lot to me that she told me about it, and I made sure that I went and said hello to Brenda every morning. She was quite often late, by the way, so if she wasn't there, I wouldn't say good morning to her. But anyway, I also sent her this slide after I started talking. I'm like, "I don't want you moaning at me anymore, Brenda. You're going across the whole country here, and your name is front and center, so shut the hell up." So what am I most proud of? Well, clearly I'm most proud that we evacuated an entire city with one way in and one way out. But from a leadership perspective, I'm most proud that we didn't yell at anybody or raise our voice through the whole event. Not one time did me or any of my team get to a level where we were yelling or screaming. And it was pretty stressful. So I'm very proud of that. We would say, "Can you do this, please? Can you do that, please? Thank you very much." And it was calm. It was civil. It was decent. And that's the way it should be, in my opinion. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories around leadership decisions, primarily crisis management decisions, in my opinion. And this is the story about how we came up with the North-South split. This is a picture of a man called Chris's notebook. And he came to see me on this morning, and he said, "I've done a mathematical calculation, and based on how many cars we've got, based on the road space, we're not going to get all the cars on the road and send them south. It's impossible, and it will create a huge backlog of traffic, and people will suffer. We need to split the city a little bit and send some people north," and that's the idea I have. And I said, "Well, that's great." I said, "But it's the craziest idea I've ever heard of. First of all, the fire is going north. How the hell do you expect me to send the people north? That's craziness." And we didn't have long to talk about it. We had 5 or 10 minutes, and he said, "Well, it's a rock and a hard place, but in my opinion, the chances of survival are more if we send them north than the chances of survival if we send them all south." I said, "Okay, let's go with that." And it turned out to be a good decision. We drew a line on the map at Taganova. You came out on that junction, the RCMP officer sent you north, and if you came out on the junction below, the RCMP officer sent you south. We changed all the lane directions, so all 4 lanes were changed northbound going north, and all 4 lanes were changed southbound going south, and it worked quite well for us. I'm not saying it wasn't busy, it was, but at least we got all the traffic out. I've thought about that decision, and if it had gone wrong, first of all, I wouldn't be telling you it was his idea. I'd be saying it was my idea and it was my fault. But it was his idea, and it was a good idea, so that's why I can tell you his name. But if it had gone wrong, I would have been hung up, right? I mean, what are you doing sending them north when the fire's going north? But sometimes you do things, and this one worked out well for us. The second decision was more of a personal one, I guess, for me. This man in the jacket, his name's Mike. He's normally a storeman in the warehouse within the municipality, and he came in and he was my logistics guy for the first, couple of weeks of this fire. And he came to see me on around about 3 o'clock on the 3rd, and he said, "Chief, I need to leave. My neighbor's been on the phone, and our houses are burning down, and I have a dog at home, and I need to get home and see what I can do." So I said, "I can understand that, I appreciate that, but I need you to listen to me before you go, and then you can do whatever." I said, "I know where you live, and right now with the way the traffic is, it's probably going to take you 3, 4, 5 hours to get there, if you get there at all. And unfortunately, what are you going to do when you get there? And secondly, I'm not lying to you. You're the only logistics guy I have. You're so important to me right now that I don't know what I'll do without you. But if you choose to leave, I'll support you and wish you well, and you let me know." So he went away for 10 minutes, and then I was talking to someone else, and he came back and he gave me a wave and he said, "I'm sticking around." And I said, "I appreciate that, thank you very much." He lost his home and he lost his dog. And it's not easy now for me to talk about it, but it was hard on me then. And I know it was the right decision to make, but those types are not easy. They're not easy on a person. And in this type of event, you have to see the bigger picture, and how can you save most of the people, and how can you save most of the buildings. And his little part in that jigsaw puzzle that day was to stay, and unfortunately, he had that loss. He's a good friend of mine. He's rebuilt his house. I don't know if he's got a new dog or not yet, but he's doing okay. The difference between crisis leadership and leadership, I think they're very similar, I'll be honest. You know, I think in any leader, you want honesty, you want openness, you want support, you want a positive outlook, you want to be told to do something that's morally and ethically correct, you don't want lies, and all those things. You want time with the person is important when they give you time. And in crisis leadership, you need all those things, and one of the things you don't have is time. So you don't have an hour or 2 hours to have a meeting or a chat. You have 5 or 10 minutes. So I told the people that when they came to see me. I had a meeting and I said, "Listen, this is busy." I had a continual lineup for days on end. I said, "When you come to see me, tell me what your problem is. Hopefully you have a solution for me, and if we like it, I'll just say, away you go and do that." And that worked quite well for us. Of course, in crisis leadership, the ramifications of the decision are elevated. If you get it wrong, you're not just wasting stuff or costing stuff, you're potentially, losing human life. So the ramifications of that, and you wear that. You wear everything you say and do, and that's just the way it is. I think it's important to be optimistic. I think it's important to stay calm. This picture was taken at the end of day 3, and it was taken at a news conference that I was part of. And I was tired, and I was emotional, and I wasn't doing great. And they asked me, how did I feel? And I said, "I feel like shit." I said, I think this is possibly the worst day of my career. And yet, in the ensuing days and weeks, it has turned out to be the best day of my career. So my message is, you never know, right? You keep plugging away, you do the right things, and often good things can happen. So just some pictures of moments that I won't forget. This is a picture of Fire Hall 1 downtown. They don't usually have horses in the fire hall. There's no trucks, they're all out. And I think it's kind of nice that we had those logos put on the door. We all come home safe. So those are specifically meaningful because of what we went through up there, and they did all come home safe, which was really nice. So these 2 people they sat on a milk crate like that for 2 days and 2 nights with those horses. They'd been evacuated from their home, and they decided they didn't want to do that. They were going to stick around, and then on the 4th or the 5th, the fire actually started impacting their home, so they came into the fire station with these 2 horses. They told me afterwards they came to the fire hall because they figured we wouldn't let the fire hall burn down. So anyway, they stayed with us for a couple of days. I wasn't in this building, but they stayed down there with the guys, and there were some volunteers down there. They fed them on Weetabix and Snickers bars and whatever else. It worked out just fine. And we found a trailer for them, and we sent them away. This is a picture from a gas station door, a Max store. This took your washer fluid for our fire trucks, sincerely, the firefighters. That is still on the door. I'm going to suggest it will probably stay there forever. And I think it speaks to those men and women of the fire service that they could have pulled up and taken 2 pallets of washer fluid if they'd wanted, and no one would have said anything. But they left a note. And we took a lot of stuff. There was no one in town. So, you know, we had a magical key to Superstore and Canadian Tire and whatever else we needed, Mark's Work Warehouse, and we took lots of stuff because we needed it. And we would leave a note. And we never ever got a bill, which was very nice. I went to pick the Prime Minister up, flew down on the Friday night. I picked him up on the Saturday and flew up in the plane with him and briefed him. On the Friday night, when I got there, I managed to go and have a beer. It was probably the best beer I've ever had in my life. I went to pay for the beer, and the waitress gave me this napkin. She said, "Someone's taking care of it for you." We left now, but we have a home in Thickwood. We wanted to respect your privacy, but we wanted to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Tears and hugs to you and your comrades, Brian and Rena. The little things make a difference, ladies and gentlemen, and this made a big difference to me. I appreciate it now. It's special. They didn't have to do it, and many people were very supportive to me, and they didn't stick around. They just did things like this, and it's wonderful. I've never met them. I don't think they care. They're just they just signify how many wonderful, good people are living up there. We got thousands and thousands of letters from school children across the country. They want to be a firefighter when they grow up. They've seen the big fire. They want to do this. They want to do that. And I put my hand in the bag one day, and this is the one I came out with, and I kind of liked it, so I'll read it to you. The important thing about firefighters is them rescue people from fires, them put out fires, them drive a big truck with loud sirens. When them done their job, they eat donuts. But the important thing about firefighters is them rescue people from fires. Wise words from Freeman. He's a grade 1 student in Fort McMurray, and we managed to find Freeman, and he came into the fire hall with his mom, and we gave him a fire chief's helmet, and the guys took him out in the trucks for a couple of hours, and Freeman was a happy camper. This is a picture of a coffee cup that was given to me on the first day that Tim Hortons opened in Fort McMurray. And I do not show you this picture, sincerely, because I believe that I'm worthy of this word, because I really don't. I show you this picture because of the story around it. The whole town was evacuated, including a lot of service personnel which worked for, you know, the McDonald's and the Tim Hortons of the world. And then when we went through the re-entry process, in planning the re-entry process, you've got to get the town in some sort of semblance to get people back. So you need a hospital, you need stores, you need a barn, you need a leisure facility, you need somewhere for ladies to have babies, you need mental wellness facilities, and you need a coffee shop, right? People meet in coffee shops. Tim Hortons had 3 in town at the time. He opened 1. So he is calling all his staff to come back and get this place ready to open. And they are terrified. They were terrified when they left, and they're terrified when they came back. And yet, they came back because they knew it would make a difference. And they come back, like this young lady, for $15 an hour, and you don't get much for $15 an hour in Fort McMurray. So here she is on the busiest day of her life. The lineup is from here to Kentucky, and I eventually get to the front and I order my coffee. She won't take the money. I put the money in the box and I say thank you very much, and I walk outside, and I don't see what's on the list. And then I get outside and I'm just about to step off the sidewalk, and I'm going to open my sippy cup, and there it is. And I completely broke down. I started crying like a baby, and it was like all this emotion was pouring out of me, and I couldn't stop it. And I was sobbing, standing there. I felt like an idiot. And people are coming up to me. I think they thought I was having a heart attack or something. And you know, it was just an outpouring, and it was so special to me. And again, it's a perfect example that the little things make a difference. So I go back into Tim's. I march around the counter. I give her a big hug, and I told her what a difference she'd made in my life. And it sits in my bedside cabinet, and I look at it every now and then if I'm having a bad day. And I really, really appreciate it. A couple more slides. This is a picture taken of the bridge as you come into Fort McMurray. It's since been renamed Responder Way by Mayor and Council, which is wonderful, and this is the reason it was renamed. There were 5 days of re-entry, approximately 4 or 5 weeks after the people left, and it took a lot of work to get there. One of the things that my assistant wanted to do as part of re-entry was have a welcome from the firefighters to the people coming back to town. You have to realize now this is weeks after the fire. I'm back to being a fire chief. I'm not in charge of the world anymore. I have bosses, there's council, there's politics going on. So I'd gone to different people and pitched this idea, and they didn't like it. They said no. Okay. So I go back to the fire hall, and Bev's there. How did it go? I said, it didn't go. She said, what do you mean it didn't go? I said, that I didn't get permission. She's 5'3". She stands up, she starts poking me in the chest. She said, I don't know if you know what the hell you're talking about. She said, but you're probably the most popular man in the country right now. What are they going to do, fire you? So I said, well, fair enough, you know. What do you want to do? Well, this is what I want to do. I want to put the 2 trucks up. I want these 3 flags. I've got the 2 little ones. All I need is the Canadian Maple Leaf. Do you know where it is? Yes, it's in Edmonton. How much is it? $500. Okay, up it comes. Province is paying. Lovely. So up it came. And we set up that welcome committee, and they stayed up there day and night for those 4 or 5 days. The people came back. Here's 2 reasons why it was super important. Those firefighters, at least some of them, still felt really guilty about losing 20% of the property. They couldn't get their head wrapped around that it was a success story. They just worried about the property they lost. And they felt bad about it. And those people coming down that highway, honking their horn and waving, it made those firefighters feel better about themselves, and it made them feel that the people were appreciative. And that was a good reason in itself. And for those people coming home, they were worried that what they would find. Some of them knew that they didn't have a home anymore. Some of them knew their home was damaged. And when they came around that top corner and saw those aerial trucks with that flag, it made a difference to them. It made them feel like they were home. And the firefighters were probably the last ones they saw when they left. So, you know, if that flag cost $5,000 or $50,000, it was worth every penny, in my opinion. So I think, a quick picture of my family. Like everybody, my family is very important to me. I love them very much. This picture is taken when I went on my first break. We went to Bowen Island, which is just off Vancouver. And the reason I show you this is because there were times during this fire, you know, the odd moment where I thought maybe I won't see them again. And you start thinking about benchmarks in your family life, you know, when you got married and when your kids were born, when you taught your kid to ride a bike and when you taught them to swim. And you're worried that you may not see that again. So my message is, we all work hard. It's good to have a good work ethic, but find a good work-life balance. Take the time to spend with your family, tell them you love them, tell them you appreciate them, and it'll be a better time. So that's my message on that one. I got one more picture for you. I want to thank you very much for your time. You've been a wonderful group. I'm speaking again for tonight for another group that belongs to Goldcorp, so that's something to look forward to. I do appreciate it. And I have one more picture for you. When we went to Bowen Island, we were going up for a cup of coffee one morning, and there was a blackboard on the floor in front of the coffee shop. And it had some words written on the blackboard, and I almost fell over when I read it, because it was like somebody had written it for us. And it was specifically for me and people from Fort McMurray and all those people. And I just stood there and looked at it, and I was kind of almost breathless. But anyway, I took a picture of it because I thought, I'm going to use that one day. And I use it to close all my presentations. So I hope you enjoy the words. It's impossible, said pride. It's risky, said experience. It's pointless, said reason. Give it a try, whispered the heart. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. You want to do some questions? Sure. I'll just grab a quick.
So real quickly, just before Darby will answer a few questions, if anybody has any. Again, I just want to thank Darby for sharing his story with us. I believe there's, sitting back listening, there's many, many takeaways. I could probably stand here for the next, 4 hours just talking about all the different lessons and all the different words that he said to us. But truly, you can see how humble he is in regards to what he's done, and we need more of that in the world. And again, I just want to thank Darby for sharing his story. And on behalf of Goldcorp, we'd just like to give you the...
Well, thank you so much. Is it a gold block? Thank you very much.
So if you have any questions for Darby, anybody got any questions? Remember the rules, right? Only one at a time.
Don't all speak at once. Come on. Good.
First of all, Darby, thank you for your presentation. That was quite the story.
My pleasure.
Just trying to think back of everything you went through. How did you keep your decisions recorded? Did you have a scribe walking in your back pocket, record it? How did you keep track of everything you were doing?
Initially, before the province came up, nobody was recording the decisions. A lot of the decisions I made was being sent out on Twitter and Facebook anyway, because they were in the form of direction. So there is timestamps to do with that. To be honest, I wasn't thinking a whole lot of what I was recording and what I wasn't. But then when the province came up, that was a process. Anybody who was in management had a scribe. They tried to give me a scribe. I'm like, no, I got Bev, right? Well, Bev hasn't done the course, whatever. She's worked for me for 8 years. She can write what I want to say. So she was my scribe, and yeah, that's kind of how we went on. So it got more formalized when the province got there. Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about formalized, when the government did step in, you were the fire chief of Fort Mac, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't think, okay, well, we're going to get our own people in there, I guess, because you had the knowledge of the area and everything. Is that why you led the incident throughout?
So I was the fire chief, and then I became the director of management for the state and local emergency. And when the province took over, I was named as the director of emergency management for the province, which, to be honest with you, I was quite surprised at. I thought they would parachute a guy in. And a guy who's in charge of it for the province called me, and he actually came to see me with the Premier. And I think they asked me a bunch of questions, considering if I'd gone completely batshit crazy or not, right? And I seemed to be holding it together okay. So they said, we're going to name you for the role. And I said, sure, right? It was a little scary, but it was an honor and a pleasure. And I did it for 2 weeks, because after that it was more, now we're planning for re-entry, we're planning for what we need. That's not my skill set. I helped with that stuff. So I was the evacuation and the fire guy, and happy to do it. So they did send a lot of people up, and they're quite subtle. You've obviously never been in that situation before, but they all wear black pants and black shirts, and they kind of wander around and they kind of ghost around, right? And then you don't get told directly what you should do or when you should do it, but if I made a direction, or okay, we're going to do this black shirt would appear and kind of whisper in my ear, maybe that wasn't a good idea, right? And I'm like, whatever, that's what we're doing, right? So, but they were wonderful, they were great, so it was okay, yeah.
So what kind of support did you receive from the oil and gas companies in the area?
Outstanding. They were incredible, and they were in a tough place. First of all, they helped us immensely with the people, right? We put lots of people up there. And then when the fire eventually got there, they were they were forced to vacate their plant sites, or pretty well everybody. And of course, in the forestry and agriculture world, they are busy fighting fire where it's a priority, which is where people are. So that site then, or sites, didn't qualify as somewhere that needed extinguished. And of course, the oil sands community didn't like that. So they came to a different arrangement with regards to funding and bringing special resources in so that they could end up saving those facilities, because at the end of the day, they're kind of, you know, a big money generator for the country. So they were wonderful, they were great, they had a presence in REOC for the whole time. You know, I knew those guys well. So they were fantastic, yeah.
Mr. Allen, I'd like to know, how are you today, and how are your crews doing after all this time?
Yeah.
And what resources, if any, did the province or are offered to the crews in Fort Knight?
So I'm doing fine, thank you very much. I'm semi-retired now. I spend my life speaking, which is incredible. You know, who knew? So, but mentally, I wasn't in a great place for a while. I spoke about that. I got some help. There were a lot of resources in town that were specifically there to look after emergency responders, and many people took, you know, avail of that. But the challenge in mental wellness is not generally the resources. It's that initial, you've got to go. You've got to reach out and ask for the help. And if you don't reach out and ask for help, then it's not coming. So that's where we have to get people to say, you know what, I am not doing great. And even if you're not sure, then go on to talk to someone. So we were looked after very well. There are some firefighters, it doesn't matter how many, but it's less than 10 and of a total staff of 215 that are still not back at work from that fire, and they're not off through physical injuries. So it's sad. And there are people there, both in the emergency world and the general public, that will need help for many, many years. You know, a friend of mine is a therapist, she's still up there, and she sees 8 people a day, and they're still struggling with that evacuation. So it's hard.
This event is obviously pretty incredible, and often events of this size give us a chance to sort of reflect, because they don't come around very often. Is there, considering all the success that you had, have you had a chance to think back on things that you would change? Heaven forbid it would ever happen again.
Sure. I have thought about it quite a lot. I've had the question asked before. And my answer is, with the information we had at the time, I wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, clearly, it would be nice now if we could go back and say, on that Monday when we first found it, let's go, right? Let's vacate, but nobody would have gone. But, so as far as decisions, things like that, I'm good with all of them. The way we treat the people, I'm good with all of them. There is one thing that didn't go well, which I would like to change. So the local firefighters have been fighting that fire for almost 4 days by the time the province came in. And the province came in with, you know, a couple of hundred people, and they came into REOC, and then we said, okay, you go to this place, you go to that place, where we had sector commands set up around the city. We didn't warn our own firefighters that they were coming. We just sent them. So when they get there, now you get a guy like me show up with 4 stripes, and he taps the captain on the shoulder and said, don't worry now, you guys can go home, we've got it in hand. Well, how do you think that went over, right? Not good. There was a little bit of this, to say the least, and a little bit of, you know, F you, we're not leaving, right? And it was a struggle. So we had to go in and do more communication. These guys have come to help us. You're tired. You can't keep doing this work. But it took some convincing. So my wish is that we would have done a much better job of communicating that. I don't know how we would have done it, but it would have been nice to do that.
So you obviously ran on adrenaline. Is there any point in time where you wanted to just say, can somebody else make the decisions? Can I take this away from me?
Sure. Pretty well every day, ma'am, to be perfectly honest. But you know that's not going to happen, right? You do find moments where it's a struggle. I had 2 or 3 people that were close to me that I bounced things off, that I had help with decision making. But at the end of the day, it's me that's making it, you know, and there's no other way around it. So good or bad, you wear that. And certainly there are moments where you think, like, are we ever going to get through this? This is bad. But you just keep plugging away, I guess. And you think about your family and you think about other people's families and you try and keep going and, you know, eventually you come out of it. So I don't really have any other answer apart from that. But it was not, I wouldn't be volunteering for another one. Let's put it that way. You know, I'll leave it to someone else for next time.
With all the good things that you guys did, do you know if the provincial or federal government put together any kind of task force to help out with any future fires that do come up?
I think those task forces are still in place, sir. They're there, you know, at the kind of call of each province. I believe Task Force 2 is in Calgary. Task Force 1 is in Vancouver, and they're a global deployment operation. And I don't know if Ontario's got Task Force 3, but they're there. It's just a matter of, well, what is the emergency, where are we going to go, and how do we round the guys up? So those things are funded, but they could probably be funded a little bit better. But there's lots of things like that in the emergency world, right? So I want to tell you a quick story, if I may, just before I go. And it speaks to, you know, I call it the miracle of McMurray because in my mind it was a bit of a miracle. I'm not a deeply religious man. I told you those 4 reasons why it was successful, but there's a tremendous amount of just luck in there, fortitude, right? Something happened on that day that magically enabled them all to get out of there. And this is a story that talks about how lucky we were. So realizing that, you know, there's around about 100,000 people in McMurray. A lot of people are shift workers in the oil sands. They go to work, they do their 12 hours at night, they come back in the morning, they go to bed, right? And they're not getting up till 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then they're going to work again. On day 4, the firefighters were fighting a fire on the west of the city. The whole town has been evacuated now for quite a few hours, at least 12. And they're fighting the fire, and they see this guy coming walking down the road. He's got a t-shirt on, a pair of jeans, and a pair of flip-flops, and he's walking down the road. And they're looking at him thinking, who the hell is this, and where the hell has he come from? And he comes up to them, and he says, how you guys doing? They said, good, how are you? He's like, good. He said, what are you guys doing? Bit of a fire, eh? They're like, it's a massive fire, and we've evacuated the whole city. He's like, really? He had no idea, absolutely no idea. Yeah, it came in yesterday, the whole town's been again. I can't believe it. I know, really. I was wondering, I hadn't seen my neighbor, and he's giving it all this stuff. So, you know, they put him in the fire truck, and they take him back, and they ship him out of town. But for all those communities that were decimated, it is a miracle that that guy wasn't asleep in his basement for that amount of time, or hundreds more like him, right? So I don't know how you explain that. I don't know how you talk about that, but you're just very grateful for it. So I don't know what he'd had. He'd either had too much of this or too much of the happy stuff, but he was not. So I think that's all. So thank you very much for sorry.
Sorry, just thank you for your service and your time and dedication to detail with your crew and everything. The question I have is about the media. Did the media properly represent the situation? Were they supportive? And did they, come to the right conclusions and everything else when they reported the stories that were happening to in your situation?
I have to say they were actually amazingly good. They were desperate to get into town and be in town. There was one guy that got in and got some footage, but we kept everybody else out. We had orders, and we wouldn't let the media into town for quite a few days. Initially, they decided that sending drones would be a good idea because then they could send the drones in and get all the footage. Well, helicopters don't like drones, so we had to ask them to politely take the drones out, and they did so. And then when we organised the interviews, we did it on a certain time, and they were very decent. They were respectful. I didn't feel like they were asking me that was anything unreasonable. So yeah, overall they were fine. People have asked me before, did I have any? I had no training in media relations, public relations, anything. It's like, Darby, you're going to talk. I'm like, okay. So I just went and talked, and that went quite well. The first time, because the other thing is, when you're in there, you don't realise it's as big an event as it is, right? I mean, it literally went all around the world. My wife was in England on holiday, visiting my mum, having a cup of tea, and her sister phoned her and said, you should turn the TV on, Darby's on the TV. She thought I'd murdered somebody, right? She was like, what the hell's he doing on? I'm on the BBC in England. So it went around the world, which you have no idea. The first day the media came into town, they said to me, you go over here, you get the bus with the media, and you're going to give them the spiel and tour them around and show them where the devastation is and so. I said, sure. So I show up, and I get on the front of this bus, and I can hear click, 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 and I get to the top, and I look, and it's just a sea of those things, and cameras. And I was like, holy shit, right, this is terrifying. You know, I didn't know. So I give them my spiel, and blah, blah, blah. So then there's a seat here at the front, and I sit down, and there's a guy sitting next to me. He's got a laptop on his lap. He's got a kind of a stick here with a camera-looking thing on it, and he's typing. And I'm like, how you doing? He's like, good. I said, what are you doing? He said, that stuff that you just sent, I've just sent it to Los Angeles. I'm like, Los Angeles? Right? I said, who's in Los Angeles? Well, CNN, BBC, and he lists these major news. I was like, you have got to be kidding me, right? I said, I'm used to talking at Fort McMurray today and, you know, the Boys and Girls Club at Fort McMurray, right? So that then kind of brought it down to me that it was big. And of course, then everybody in them wants an interview, right? And you can't. You have to set it up. This is the time of day. You come at this time of day. So, just as a side issue, I spoke at the Saskatchewan Fire Chiefs, and the fire chief from Humboldt was at the fire chief, which is the department that lost all those kids with the hockey accident. And he listened to my talk, and he came to me afterwards, and he asked me about the media. He said, how did you deal with it? He said, because right now, I think he said there was 1,500 people in Humboldt. So there were more reporters in Humboldt at the time than there were people almost. And he said they wanted to interview anybody and everything that had anything to do with the fire, which is what we went through. And he said, you know, how did you deal with that? He said, because I can't do it. I can't do it all, you know. So I said to him, well, I got two pieces of advice for you. First of all, you are going to do it. You are that guy. That's what they expect. And you need to tell them to stay away from everybody else and come and see you. But set up appointments and give them times, and you can regroup. And secondly, sadly, there will be something else that's really, really bad in 2 or 3 weeks, and they will all leave, and they'll all go and cover something else. And sadly, you're waiting for the next bad thing, because that's the only time they're going to leave you. And I don't know if they're still there or not, but that's just the way they operate. I don't know if you guys have a public information officer, or someone who you think is going to do that stuff if you ever have a bad time, but I'm here to tell you, they don't care. Where's the boss guy? Right here. That's who they want to talk to. They don't care about anybody else. So, that's just life. That's the way it goes. Thank you very much.
We got time for one more quick question from Borden, JY had. So it's in regards to, what did you have set up, or was there set up incident command center or system?
Yes, we had incident command set up right away. We ran an incident command system called Blue Card. It was written by, there used to be a famous fire chief in Phoenix called Brunacini. It was written by Brunacini's son. So we were on Blue Card. Also, all our outside fire departments, industry and everybody was also on Blue Card. So we were all on the same page. So that worked well for us. Yeah, you know, without getting into incident command, it's pretty standard stuff. You know, people color coded, people know what they're doing, sensitive command operations, all that stuff. So, and when the province came up, they went on the same incident command system that we were on. So it worked very well. Thank you.
Okay, again, I want to thank you, Darby, for sharing your stories, and thanks a lot for answering the questions. So again, everybody, thank you, Darby.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So Darby's off with Phil for a quick pit tour, so he wants to be able to see what we kind of do here. We're going to take a break, but before we do the break, everybody want to pay attention, pull your tickets out. We'll have 5 more draws. 6938389. 389. We got one? Bingo? 6938432. 432. Do we have 432? Mr. Breton. 6938265. 265. Oh, sorry, Joe. You're not allowed to pick anything else. 6938433. 433. 433. We got it, Dave. Is that you? No. Oh, you can't call bingo if you don't have bingo. 6938404. 404. We got a 404. There we go. So we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll wrap up this afternoon. We still got about another 45 minutes. If everybody could take their seat. We'll have 5 more draws. It'll be the last draws for the day. These ones are, I believe, gift cards, so some of them are kind of nice. 6938247, 247. Dougie? There's a bingo. 6938256, 256. Sounds like we got a ha-ha over there. Six nine three eight 405 405. Got one there. 6938 241 241. Last one of the day. 6938. It's probably not very far. 246. 246. Did I? 241, 405, 256, 247.
You say 246?
246, yeah. So I believe we're good. If you wish. So again, thanks for coming back on time. What I'm going to do is Mark's got a bit of an exercise he's going to go through, which is, and kind of wrap up the day and get the things kind of closing it out. So I'll give it over to Mark.
All right. So, how was today? I'm glad to say I had nothing to do with it. Rick and his team did all the work. So, I think I've said this to everybody before, but why I do these days and why these days are important to me is because if I want to raise the bar at PGM, I got to raise the bar in this room. I need to make you better supervisors, better leaders, so that we can succeed. Right? So you didn't think I'd just bring you here all day for your pretty blue eyes, or brown or gray or green or whatever they are, and not make you do a little bit of work, did you? So what I want you to do is over the next hour, we're going to think about how we raise the bar in leadership at PGM. How we raise the bar. Not what other people can do for us. How we raise the bar as leaders. And so I'm going to break it down into 3 little simple exercises. The first one is I'm going to give you 5 minutes to be super quiet, internalize, because that's what we have to do as leaders sometimes. We sort of got meditate a little bit, to use Celia's example. We got to think a little bit. We need some time with ourselves a little bit. You're going to take 5 minutes, and you're going to think of 3 things that you learned today. The 3 most important things that you learned today and how they change who you are as a leader. Top 3. Easy enough? Yeah, you need to think though. And guess what? We never spend enough time thinking. So, 5 minutes. Top 3 things that you learned today and how they impact you as a leader. Starting now. Borden has to do this too, by the way. Okay, so that was about 5 minutes. So I want you to be completely honest with me. I want you to raise your hands if you didn't have enough time. Who didn't have enough time? One person, all right. I want you to raise your hands if you thought that that 5 minutes took forever. One person, anybody else? 2 people, 3 people, a few? And how many people thought that was just right? So, I'm going to say that 5 minutes to think about yourself is not enough time. All right? So, I say this at Step Up all the time. The person that probably influenced my career the most was the CEO of Placer Dome. Most people who were with Placer remember him. His name was Steve Reed. Steve Reed once said to me, Mark, if you want to be a good leader, you need to take an hour a week, close your door, not let anybody disturb you, and think about yourself as a leader, your priorities, and map out what you're going to do next. 5 minutes I gave you. That's a far cry from an hour. That's a 12th of the amount of time that Steve recommended, right? Because if you're always firefighting, you're always reacting, you're always putting out the fire, how are you supposed to think about what you're going to do with your team and how you're going to take your team forward? You just don't have the time. And let's be honest, when you get home at night, there are more important things than thinking of yourself as a leader. Because that's that work-life balance thing. So what are you supposed to do? Take care of your wife or your husband or your kids or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your pet or whatever those things are. You're supposed to be able to turn it off. And you're supposed to be able to get on with your private life after hours. I know it's hard, but if you don't take that time to think about yourself every week, it's never going to get easier. Does that make sense? And hey, I forget to do it sometimes, and I need that kick in the pants sometimes to close my door. All right? Because we all got to do it. Believe me, we all got to do it. You got to find the time somewhere. All right, so now, the second part of the exercise is you're all sitting at a table. And I want you to share for the next 15, 20 minutes with the other people at the table what those key learnings are. What I'm going to want is I'm going to want the top 3 from each table. Borden's going to email or text theirs to JY. I'm going to want each table to share what those top 3 learnings are today. We don't want to have 6 or 7 because there's too many tables. That's not to say that someone can't record them and give them to Rick if there's more than 3, but I really want the top 3. And I think you're going to find that there's a lot of repetitiveness at each table anyway, by the way, right? Which is okay. But find a way amongst yourselves, you're all good leaders, each and every one of you, to prioritize for me the top 3. So when I ask your table, you're not going to give me 6. You're not going to give me 10. You're not going to give me 12. You're going to give me 3. You're not going to give me 2 or 1. You're going to give me 3. All right? So starting right now, start talking with your table. Okay. So I went around and every table bar one had 3. So we're going to start. So I got Teresa over there to write some of this down. I'm just going to turn off my timer because I know what's going to happen. There you go. All right, so I don't want to start at this end because everyone's going to want to hear what Don says, and it's going to influence what everybody else says. So I'm going to start here and kind of make my way this way, all right? Who's talking at this table?
Thanks. All right, our number one was it's okay to ask for help. That came from Daryl's presentation, excellent presentation, regardless of the time or situation. And our last speaker was very inspirational, and he kept on bringing up the small things do matter. Don't get overwhelmed with the big stuff. And last but not least, open up the lines of communication with your crew members. With that communication, you get to know them better and better each day. And that's an easy way to detect any changes in their personality, and that could be an indication of something that's going on with their mental health. And don't be afraid to ask questions and address those questions. If they do have a problem, they want to pull them into office and help them out.
That was a modified 3. So, I'm sure we're going to hear some common themes, right? But we got, it's okay to ask for help. Focus on the small things, not just the big things, right? Both. And third, open up the lines of communication with your crew. All right, let's see what this table's got to say.
So first we got don't judge, keep an open mind, and active listen. So we have employees sometimes that we may think is a certain way, Stigma, and you give them an opportunity and all of a sudden they excel. I've seen that throughout my career, so don't be afraid that the person that's in the corner, ask them, challenge them, you'll be surprised what they can do. Second would be positive, trust, encourage, be humble and honest. As a leader. And the third one, same as the first theme, small things go far. Don't forget to listen to the little things. Recognize them and follow up with those little things, such as a 5-point card. Somebody puts down a remark, talk to them, get back to them. It goes a long ways.
Thank you. So we got a revote on small things matter, and we got 2 new ones. Don't judge, keep an open mind, be positive, humble, and honest. I kind of paraphrased it a little bit, but all right, this table over here. Who's talking?
So we also have ask for help. So this is if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed with anything, or if you're having issues at home, like don't be afraid to look for the right places and use the resources available to ask for help. Look out for your coworkers and look for signs and mood changes, signs of mental health issues, etc. And operate at the right level. So trust your people, trust them to make good decisions, all of that. So that came from Darby's presentation.
Okay, so what did we add? Ask for help is on there for the second time. Look out for coworkers and signs of people that might need help, right, or need to talk. And then trust your coworkers. Trust your teams. Okay, this table over here, who's
first of all, be present, active listening. Sorry. Be present, active listening. The second one is know your people, put yourself in their shoes. And the third one is you're not alone, ask for help.
So ask for help is now on there 3 times. Did you get the second one? What was the second one again? Sorry. You can't go too fast, otherwise Teresa can't keep up. Know your people. So that's the empathy, right? Put yourself in their shoes. So, okay, over here.
Okay, so same as the first one there, realizing you need help and acting on it. Second one is actively listening. Small things matter. and also show recognition and build trust.
So show recognition and build trust, and the other ones are repeat, asking for help and listening because the small things matter, right? I'm gonna call this the pit table over here because that's the majority.
Okay, so take care of the small things again. Reach out for help when needed. Know your support system. There's always someone out there that can help you out. And stay calm and embrace change. Believe in yourself and be confident of your ability to succeed.
Oh, I like that one. Embrace change. Stay calm and embrace change. Woo. That's loaded, man. I'm telling you. There's some insight there, let me tell you. That's really deep. Absolutely.
We picked mental health awareness. Show your compassion. Okay. We also picked teamwork. Show your compassion. Lead with confidence. Trust your leaders. Reassure them. Tell them you value their professionalism. Make them part of the team. And then not only the workers, but the supervisors too, right? No one is invincible, so take time to regroup if need be.
I like that last one. Hey, take time to regroup if need be. Which is kind of like take time for yourself every week. Who's talking over here? Michelle?
So for us, what do we have is feedback, open communication, be prepared, and build the trust with your team and your colleagues.
Did you get that, Teresa? So what do we got? We got build trust, be prepared, and what was the first one? Feedback from colleagues, all right?
Okay, so like the other tables, we have the importance of the small things, so celebrating small wins, encouraging conversation. That came from Darby's presentation and Celia's as well. The other one was improving on huddles, so making them more relevant, knowing the material before you present, and presenting in a way that motivates people. And the other one was improved team communication.
Yeah, I like that first huddle. It came from the prehistoric times. Don remembered that one too. So. Okay, over here.
Yeah, we have be observant and recognize signs of mental disorder, I guess you could say, or unwellness. Again, ask for help, rely on your support. And one that stuck out was one of Rick's comments, what you accept, you permit, so it goes right from the get-go. You have to set your boundaries right off the bat so nobody crosses it.
What you accept, you commit. Pretty deep. Over here.
All right, so we pretty much talked about the same thing as everybody else. The power of positive thinking definitely affects and sets the tone for the rest of the day for the team and for yourselves is one of them. Second one that stood out for us was that there is a support group for everyone, whether you're new at the mine or at home or anywhere else. There is somebody there for support, so don't be scared to ask. And the third one, like a lot of people said, was the little details matter. We discussed a lot of the small things that help build a better, bigger picture for everyone.
Thank you. You'll do Borden? All right.
So again, much of the same. Small things matter. Ask for help. Do not feel ashamed. Help is available. That work-life balance that we all talk about. And number one, get to know your people. Notice change in your people. Connect with them. 20% of people affected by mental health illness, not invisible, stressor project.
of active listening, taking care of your mental health, and positive attitude sets a positive tone. So, you know, coming to work, and if as a leader you look awfully miserable, well, that certainly trickles its way down to everybody else.
So we have, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help regardless of your position. Small things make a difference, and as a leader, support your team's decisions.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? You ask your team for feedback, but then if you don't support the feedback, then maybe you shouldn't ask for the feedback, right? So, over here.
R3, we're all set, but they're all great. So, awareness of mental health. Goldcorp has a good support system, so we should all use it. And also positive reinforcement to help everybody out.
Thank you. And the last but not least.
Definitely a few repeats, but trust and empower your workforce. So actively listen, as mentioned. Make sure they know and they feel that their opinions matter. Be aware of people's mental health. You know, recognize the changes in your crew and make sure that they do know that they have a good environment, support group, that you have an open door policy. They come talk to you at any time. And then look and focus on the big picture. Lead by example, provide guidance. Find your strong leaders and rely on them. Provide feedback on their decisions and trust the work, and that'll be done.
Good. All right, so I'm going to come back to the board over here. I don't know, what do you figure are the most common? Yeah, I'd say there's a tie there somewhere for asking for help, right? So I thought Daryl's story was good, but by the way, I phone Sophie or I phone Bill Gascon or I phone Peter Gula on a regular basis. They phone me on a regular basis. I got this situation, I need help with it. How would you handle it? That's asking for help too, right? It's not, you don't have to have all the answers yourself. All right, so I think that's a big one. Small things, right? We're supervisors. We don't focus on the small things, what happens? Things start to get overlooked. When things start to get overlooked, bigger problems start to happen, right? And then we get into trouble. What else we got that's common? Trust is here a couple times. Positive attitude. Hey, this is hard, eh? If you've had a bad weekend, it's kind of hard to come in on Monday morning with a smile. I have a hard time coming in with a smile sometimes. Okay? Sometimes it takes me an hour to motivate myself. Anybody else like that sometimes? Yeah. Problem is, at 7 a.m. every morning, there's 20 or 30 people looking at us. And if we're not positive, then how do you think that crew feels going underground or in the pit or in the mill or around the office? If we don't set the tone and we're not positive, then you think anyone else is going to be positive for the rest of the day? What else? There's a support group. Yeah, I'd say it's right here. Right? And you're very fortunate, by the way. We're all fortunate. We got this gentleman who has been in this business a very long time and who personally loves to mentor and offer advice. Anybody know who that is? Dominic. Use him. That's what he does best, right? He does a lot of good things. But what he does best is offer people advice. Don't be afraid to use him. Just because he doesn't know production doesn't mean he doesn't know a lot of things. Right? He's been around the business a long time and he knows how to get out of a lot of jams. You got an issue and you don't know how to deal with it, Dominic's usually the first place to go, I'd say. Right? So, anything else on here that's kind of common? Teamwork? Wow. Need I say more? So, some really good things there. I think we know the answers. So what would be a real shame is if we invested this whole day, sit in this room for the whole day, and go back and change nothing. You notice I'm not asking you what I can change or what GoCorp can change. I'm asking you what you can change. I got lists and lists of things that we can do better as a company. And believe me, we're trying to do them. But at the end of the day, it's your outlook. That's what I want to focus on today. How do I change as a leader? Does that make sense? Rick, you got anything you want to say before we close it off? All right, so, was today worth it? Yes. Was today worth it? Yes. Should we do it again? Yes. Should we have guest speakers? Yes. I like the guest speakers. It means I talk less. I thought it was good. I got to thank Rick and his team and everybody else. I tell you honestly, I just showed up this morning. I hadn't even looked at the slide deck. They did a great job, and it's at that level where I can just say, you know what? You know when I say trust your team? Rick, you're the safety manager. Sort it out. Make sure I don't waste these people's time. Make sure we get something out of it. Did he accomplish that? There's a group at board in there, and I tell you, building a project is not like running a mine. As stressful as you think running a mine is, building a project is twice as bad. You know why? Because you got deadlines and schedules and deadlines and schedules and scope, schedule, budget, and a mine manager and a vice president who are breathing down your neck all the time saying, when am I getting my bulk sample? When am I getting my ramp? When am I getting this? When am I getting my that? So I'm glad they're listening in. I do want challenge for next meeting. Michelle's here too. You work with Mark. I want that two-way communication. I want Borden to be able to ask us questions during the day, and I want to hear it. I want them to be another table right here, even though they're sitting in Chapleau, a virtual table. All right? And we're going to get other projects in the future, and I want them to be virtual tables, wherever we are. So your challenge is to work with this gentleman, figure it out for the next meeting, which will probably be in September sometime. Okay? Yeah, get a screen up front, whatever. This guy will figure it out. I know he will. And if you don't know Michelle, maybe stand up. Michelle's our new IT guy. All right? So Sophie and I have decided to do something different. Oh my God. Change, embrace change. We decided we'd share a manager of IT. Why? Because when I was the VP in Toronto, I saw what Eleanor was doing, and I know that that's where I want to take PGM. So why wouldn't I take someone who's done it before, even if I can only get him 50% of the time, and get him to do it for me here? That's why Michelle's here, all right? And Michelle will hire whatever he needs to get it done, but at the end of the day, this man's got my trust, and he's going to make it happen, and PGM's going to be a better place for it. Who else is new since the last meeting? I know you are. Why don't you introduce yourself to the group?
Hi, I'm Lauren Woods. I'm the new metallurgical coordinator at the mill. So I work for Jerry Stinson and alongside Lynn Gerard.
So she's going to look after all the met testing and make sure that we can recover that Borden ore. I'm coming over there, don't worry. All right, so she's got a big challenge in front of her, and we got to support her in that job. Over here.
Oh, it's on camera too. I'm Mike McIntyre, I'm an electrical supervisor. And it's funny to be here today because I worked 7 years in Suncor and was in Fort McMurray for that time.
There you go.
So, yeah. Anyway.
So everything you said was true?
It was true to a point, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, welcome to the team. Anybody else new from the last meetings? Over here. Yes.
Kind of new. New to this meeting here. Brad Quinn, I was a supply chain buyer, then down to the warehouse. Now I'm a supply chain supervisor. So funny how it all works out, but I'm happy to be here, and thanks.
So Brad's an example of when I say we move a lot of people around. He's one of those internal promotions, all right? Over here.
Adam Bennett, I'm contract supervisor in the reclamation department.
Thank you. Welcome to the team. Anybody else? Over here? Oh!
Tom Weinert, temporary project supervisor working with Sean Banks on the dam and at the effluent treatment plant.
Lots of new people. Anybody else? Going once? Oh!
Good afternoon, everybody. Started out as a surveyor, breakthrough planner, and now lucky enough to be a drill blast supervisor in the open pit.
Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? What's that? Oh.
I'm also not new. I've been with the company almost 8 years now, but just been promoted to mill maintenance supervisor.
All right, so my goal is to keep doing these 3 or 4 times a year, once a quarter. Support what we're trying to do at Step Up, get you all in a room, set the baseline, get us to work together, and start to get us to figure out some problems, right? Start to figure out some solutions. And so we already got some ideas for the next ones. And by the way, don't be surprised if we come to you and we say, all right, maybe the next one's not safety. Maybe the next one is engineering and geology. Maybe you're gonna run the day. Surprise, surprise, Chris. Usually when I say something, it's because I mean it, right? So maybe we'll talk about safety for a couple hours at the start of the day, but then we'll talk about how mine planning interacts with operations or something like that. Always with the goal of raising the bar. All right? Other than that, give your feedback to your department heads or your superintendents if you thought the day was good, if there's anything we could do different. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen today and for taking the time to participate actively. Have yourselves a great evening, and we'll see you at work tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.